Howdy everyone. All right, I'm back on to doing some dedicated canopy framing work. So the next thing that I want to do before I go back to skinning these side rails, I want to go ahead and do this canopy reinforcement deal. This is for the tip-up canopy. So it's an optional. It used to be an optional kit. I believe now it's included with the fuselage. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and it's just these pieces of aluminum that you have to fit onto the back side of the canopy. So I've got the canopy frame here upside down, and I've got a couple of the pieces here. One of the first things that you do is you draw a center line down the center of this frame flange like you see here. And then the next thing they have you do is to flange the holes in these pieces. I've got two of them here completed. And they talk about this in the instructions, and they show you how to make a tool to put this flange, these flanges around each of these holes. Fortunately for me, I have lightning hole flanging dies in a few different sizes. These are the two sizes that are used for this canopy reinforcement stuff. And I've got some other sizes in here. I'm going to set up the camera and show you real quick how these are used, or at least how I use them, but I understand it's not going to be helpful to very many people because you probably don't have the dies. But I'm going to go ahead and set up the camera and show you how this works. This is how the pieces come from vans. They're just flat with the holes punched out, and then you're supposed to flange the holes like I showed you on the other piece. So let me get set up, and then I'll come back. All right, howdy everyone. I'll try to talk a little bit louder so you can hear me. So like I said, you have to put some flanges on these pieces that come from vans. They're just flat pieces of aluminum, already cut the size, cut the shape, and they want you to flange these holes. Now, like I said, I've got these flanging dies. These are aircraft lightning hole flanging dies, which I'm sure are not going to do most of you any good because you don't have these, but if you do, they are very simple to use. They come in two halves, and you've got basically a male and a female half. So this is what I'd consider the female half. It's got the cutout for the flange itself. And then what I would consider the male part is the actual, this part sticks down into this part here to make the actual flare, if you want to call it that. And then there's the centering pin that connects the two to keep them in alignment. So it's very simple. You just take these, you put your piece of material between the two of these, and you sandwich them together, you press them together, and they form the flange, the flare, I guess, whatever you want to call it. I don't have a press, so I'm going to use a vise. So here's how I do it. Of course, there are a left and right half, so you want to make sure you get the right piece oriented so that you're flanging in the proper direction, if that makes sense. So be aware of that. This would be the right side piece, so it would go this way, so I have to flange down. So it's just a very simple matter of taking the female piece, and you can see how it fits right into the hole. Like I said, these come in different sizes. So that fits right in there like that. I take the other piece, put it over top. Actually, what I'll do instead, I'll have this centered on there. It makes more sense to put the alignment pin in, and then put the other half down over top. Now at this point, you can make sure that your piece is in place by simply rotating it and jiggling it around. You can tell that it's seated on this piece here nicely. And you just make sure your pin is all the way in. Make sure that this doesn't move around. Put it in the vise. And then, just like you're doing a dimple, you want to make sure that this is completely set. Just like that. And then, there's the finished product. Just like that. And again, it's easy squeezy when you have the dies. If you don't have the dies, you have to follow the instructions and make a flanging tool. And luckily, I've never had to do that. I don't know how well those work. Obviously, guys do it all the time. I have not. I have these. So, and then for the smaller hole, obviously, I've got a die for that. A smaller die for the smaller hole. So that's it. Those are flanging dies. I'm going to finish this one up. The other ones are done. I'm going to finish this one up and then move on to what's next. Talk to you later. Howdy, everyone. Well, I've got myself a little bit of a problem. It's really not that big of a deal, but it is something that I wish Vans would have at least given me a heads up on the plans at some point, and I'll explain it here in a second. So obviously I am working on the reinforcement pieces for the canopy frame. The canopy frame is on the bench, flipped upside down, and I've just been working on these pieces. The last video I talked about doing the flaring for these holes, putting this little flange around the perimeter. I, of course, used my dies, but you can also do them by hand. After that, it's just a matter of taking the pieces and bending the flanges. All these little tabs need to be bent, and then fit them to the frame. It's a pretty straightforward process like we've done in the past. On the frame itself, you mark a center line, and then it's just a matter of aligning the individual pre-drilled holes on the part to line up with your center line, and then getting it to bend around and fit amongst the different structure pieces. I had to file this end of this piece to get it to lay in here nice, and I had to do the same thing with this piece, just this edge here on this piece a little bit. The weld of the hinge itself interferes a little bit, so I had to file that back. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. I did do some pre-bending on the part itself. These come as flat pieces. After you get the tabs measured and bent and you start fitting it, I did a little bit of bending in here. I put a little bit of a bend in here, and I put a little bit of a bend in here just to help it lay correctly. And that's it. It's really not that big of a deal. A lot of drilling and a lot of cleanup, a lot of clecoing, and a lot of on and off, especially these pieces, trying to get them to fit right. But it's not difficult. It's just tedious, like most things on the airplane. So here's my problem. I have already riveted this skin in place. The instructions really don't give you any real definite whether or not you should have the skin riveted or not when you do the reinforcement pieces. The instructions specifically say, when they're talking about these holes here, these holes go through the skin, and they talk about if this skin has not been riveted to the frame, you can dimple. If this skin has been riveted, then you have to machine countersink for these. So the instructions for the reinforcement deal talks about it either way, either riveted or not riveted. I couldn't find anywhere dealing with the frame where it specifically stated you should or should not rivet this skin in place. All of that doesn't matter anymore because mine is now riveted. This skin is now riveted onto the frame. So with that in mind, this row of rivets right here, obviously I've already put those on because those are part of this skin, and I went ahead and put those in place. However, when you go to fit this piece in, these two tabs do not have any pre-punched holes in them. These do not have holes, so that depending on where you put this and what kind of adjustments you make, you put your own holes in these. Now the instructions specifically show 2 holes on each tab. I've elected only to put 1 hole in this one because of the way that it's bent. It's got a pretty good curve to it, and I just wanted a single hole. This one lays a little bit more flat, and I was able to put 2 holes in it. Here's the problem. I had all this laid in here. I went ahead and I drilled my tabs on this part. These 2 tabs here, I pre-drilled these holes. I measured and put the holes in this piece. And once I had this piece all laid in place, I clecoed everything down, and then I match drilled these holes through the frame and through the skin. When I did that, this is the side that I had done first. So I laid it all in, fat, dumb, and happy, drilled these tabs, and here's what I got. Here's the existing rivet from the skin, and this is the cleco for the hole that I drilled for the reinforcement bracket. Now, it's very clear that this existing rivet, that hole should be shared. The skin, the frame, and the reinforcement bracket should all share that one rivet. That's how I see it. So now I've got an existing hole with a squeezed rivet already in it, and I've got another hole literally right on top of it, or damn near. So that's my problem. So on the other side, even though I have this hole already pre-drilled in this piece, I don't think I'm going to drill it through and make use of it. I think that will just be a bogus hole that's never used. I do obviously have these 2 drilled through, and you can see that there's really no issue. Here's the same rivet that matches the one on the other side that I was just showing you. And then here's the new hole, and here's the other new hole. So, of course, in hindsight, right? In hindsight, what I probably should have done was just used a single hole here and used a single hole on this one for both sides, and I wouldn't have a problem. Or, if I would have looked way far in advance, I would have left this rivet out. When I did the riveting on this skin, I would have left this rivet completely out. And then once I got my reinforcement stuff laid in place, I could have match drilled from this side through this hole and into the reinforcement stuff. Again, doesn't make a difference now because I'm already beyond all that crap. So I have to fix this. The other issue is, if I come up with a solution and get this fixed, do I duplicate it on the other side just so things match? Or do I not worry about it? Do I fix this side, however that may look, and then leave that side the way that it is? So that's the dilemma. Not the end of the world, but it's just irritating, because I think that's something, unless I missed it, which I don't think I did, I think that's something that should have been mentioned in the instructions, to either not rivet this skin until you lay out your reinforcement stuff, or some kind of a note either with this frame buildup section saying to omit putting in that particular rivet, or in the instructions that came with the reinforcement stuff to make you aware that that one rivet on this one tab may be an issue, to keep an eye out for it. None of that was mentioned anywhere. So just a mild rant. It's not the end of the world. It's no big deal. Just something to look out for when you guys get to this point. All right, so I'm going to deal with that problem and I'm going to continue on. I'll talk to you later.